Have you ever considered that the very thing we pride ourselves on, education, can also be the very thing that holds us back? The danger isn't in knowledge itself, but in how we use, or fail to use it. Tonight, let us explore the danger of education. Good morning, friends. There is a subtle danger in education, one so quiet that most never notice it until it is too late. It is the false belief that education ends. For many, school and university mark the conclusion of learning when in fact they should serve only as the beginning. To think otherwise is to accept the greatest limitation of all, the idea that we already know enough. The danger of education is not found in knowledge itself, but in the complacency it breeds. The shelves of our libraries and the screens in our homes are overflowing with information. But if that information is not put into practice, it becomes nothing more than mental clutter, gathering dust in the corners of our minds. We must remember, knowledge does not guarantee progress, only applied knowledge does. The farmer who studies every book on agriculture, but never tills the soil, will have empty fields. The man who knows every principle of health but refuses to exercise will soon find himself unwell. And the individual who studies success but never acts upon it will remain exactly where he is. The great tragedy of education is when it becomes a substitute for action. Too many of us take pride in knowing without ever doing. We live in an age where information is abundant, but wisdom born of action and experience, is scarce. Here, then, is the timeless principle: education is not measured by what we know, but by what we become. So what can we do? Begin today by transforming your knowledge into practice. Take one idea you already know and apply it to your life. If you have studied the principles of saving and investing, set aside a portion of your income tonight. If you have read about the importance of health, make a simple change. Walk a mile, drink more water, rest earlier. If you have been inspired by the stories of achievement, take the first small step toward your own. Do not let your education lull you into a false sense of accomplishment. Let it be the spark that ignites a lifetime of growth. Commit yourself to learning something new every day, but more importantly, to acting upon it. Read with intention. Reflect with purpose. Friends, the danger of education lies in believing it is enough. The truth is, it is never enough. Education is only the foundation. The structure of your life must be built through action, persistence, and a willingness to keep learning long after the classroom doors have closed. So tonight, I leave you with this call to action. Choose one piece of knowledge you already hold and put it to work immediately. Let your education breathe life into your future, for it is only in action that wisdom is born, and only in wisdom that success is assured. Education without application is like water that never touches the soil. It may exist in abundance, yet it produces nothing. We live in an age where the gathering of knowledge is easier than ever before. Books, courses, lectures, and endless streams of information are within our reach at all times. Yet the tragedy is that, for many, this accumulation of learning has become a substitute for progress rather than its source. Too often we mistake the possession of knowledge for the possession of wisdom, when in truth, wisdom emerges only when knowledge is tested, applied, and lived. It is a curious thing that a man can study the laws of success his entire life and remain unsuccessful. He can memorize every principle of health and still suffer from weakness. He can understand the psychology of leadership and still fail to lead even himself. Why? Because education without application leads only to stagnation. It freezes us in the illusion of movement while we are standing still. We confuse knowing with doing, and as a result, we live far beneath our potential. Think of the farmer who studies agriculture but never turns the earth. He may recite every detail of soil chemistry and crop rotation, but if he never plants a seed, his fields will remain barren. Or consider the musician who studies music theory endlessly but never dares to play before an audience. His education remains trapped in his mind, never transforming into the power that inspires others. The danger of this type of learning is that it builds confidence without competence. It makes us feel prepared without ever demanding proof. The secret, then, is not simply to learn but to act upon what we have learned. Every idea is a seed, but it requires planting, watering, and nurturing before it can bear fruit. When you read a book on achievement, ask yourself, what one principle can I put to work today? When you hear advice on health, ask, what one change can I make immediately? Small actions taken on real knowledge build momentum, and momentum becomes transformation. The reason so many feel unfulfilled despite years of education is not because they lack understanding, but because they lack motion. The mind thrives on growth, and growth demands that knowledge be used. Knowledge must be tested in the furnace of daily life, where mistakes refine us and practice sharpens us. Without this, education decays into nothing more than mental decoration, a library of ideas collecting dust. True success belongs to the individual who refuses to let learning remain passive. He studies, yes, but more importantly, he practices, he experiments, he applies. He learns from his own results, adjusting as he goes. He understands that knowledge is potential power, but only action turns it into real power. He is never content with knowing alone, for he understands that knowing without doing is the surest path to stagnation. Knowledge is often described as power, yet in truth it is only potential power. It rests silently within us, like a great engine without fuel, waiting for the spark of action to bring it to life. A man may fill his mind with libraries of information, he may speak eloquently on every subject under the sun, but until he acts upon what he knows, his knowledge remains as still and powerless as a stone at the bottom of a river. Action is the current that awakens knowledge, transforms it, and directs it into achievement. Without action, knowledge serves no purpose other than to give the illusion of progress. History is filled with men and women who proved that action was the dividing line between those who merely knew and those who changed the world. The great inventors did not stop with ideas scribbled in notebooks. They built, they tested, they failed, and they tried again. The great leaders did not remain in the comfort of their studies. They stepped into the arena, faced opposition, and put their understanding of human nature to work. Knowledge gave them the blueprint, but it was action that built the empire. Consider the man who reads volumes on health, who can recite the nutritional value of every food, who knows the benefits of exercise and rest, yet never changes his diet, never lifts a weight, never gives his body the rest it requires. His knowledge is real, but without action it is powerless to help him. Or think of the student of finance who understands every principle of saving, investing, and compound growth, but never sets aside a single dollar. He knows the road to wealth, but he never takes the first step. Action is the bridge between the mind and the world. It is what takes ideas from the invisible to the visible, from thought into reality. The person who understands this principle never fears having too little knowledge, for he knows that even a small amount of truth acted upon is more powerful than endless knowledge left unused. One well-applied idea can transform a career, a relationship, or a life. The tragedy is that many live as collectors of knowledge, believing that the more they gather, the more they grow. But growth comes not from collecting, but from applying. It comes from testing what we know against the conditions of life and learning from the results. Each action sharpens our understanding, and each application strengthens our confidence. Knowledge grows in value only when it is put to work, and the man who acts will always surpass the man who only knows. Knowledge is potential power, only action makes it real. It is action that gives weight to our thoughts, force to our plans, and substance to our dreams. To know and not to do is to waste the gift of understanding, but to act upon what we know is to harness the true miracle of the human mind. Formal schooling ends, but true learning never should. The classroom may close its doors, the lectures may cease, the examinations may be behind us, but life continues to test us every single day. Many make the mistake of believing that education is something confined to a set number of years, a certificate, or a degree. They leave school thinking their preparation is complete, when in reality it has only just begun. The purpose of formal schooling is not to finish our education, but to prepare us to educate ourselves for the rest of our lives. The world we live in changes constantly. Ideas shift, industries evolve, and opportunities move swiftly from one place to another. The individual who believes he has learned all he needs to know is quickly left behind. The great danger lies not in ignorance, but in the illusion of knowledge, thinking we know enough when life requires us to keep learning, adapting, and expanding. The day a person decides he no longer needs to learn is the day he begins to decline. True learning is not forced upon us by the discipline of school. It is chosen daily by the discipline of the mind. It comes from curiosity, from a hunger to grow, from a willingness to admit that no matter how much we know, there is always more to understand. The most successful men and women are not those with the most impressive diplomas on their walls, but those who carry within them a spirit of lifelong learning. They read constantly, they study deeply, they ask questions, and they seek to apply what they discover. They know that self-education is the one investment that compounds forever. Consider the craftsman who continues to refine his skill long after his training is complete. Each project becomes a classroom, each challenge a teacher. Or think of the businessman who reads, studies, and experiments continually, never content with yesterday's knowledge. He grows because he learns, and he learns because he never believes the job is finished. Life itself becomes his university, and he graduates anew with every experience. The difference between formal schooling and true learning is the difference between information and transformation. Schools provide us with tools, but it is what we do with those tools afterward that determines our future. A saw in the hands of a carpenter becomes a masterpiece, but left unused, it gathers rust. Knowledge works the same way. It is of no value if it lies dormant, but in the hands of someone determined to keep learning, it becomes the raw material of greatness. Formal schooling ends, but true learning never should. The person who embraces this truth will never fear change, for he is always growing to meet it. He will never be limited by yesterday's education, for he continues to educate himself today. And in a world where most stop learning once the classroom closes, the one who keeps learning stands apart, continually climbing while others remain still. Beware of mistaking information for wisdom. We live in an age where information flows freely, almost effortlessly. With the push of a button or the swipe of a screen, we can summon more facts in a single moment than generations before us could gather in a lifetime. But here lies a great danger, for in the flood of information, many come to believe they are wise simply because they are informed. Information is plentiful, but wisdom is rare. One is stored in the mind, the other is lived through the character. Information alone does not transform a life. It is nothing more than raw material, like unshaped stone lying in a quarry. Wisdom is the sculptor's hand that turns the stone into form, beauty, and purpose. Information tells us what something is, but wisdom tells us what it means and how to use it. To confuse the two is to mistake the map for the territory, the menu for the meal, the theory for the experience. A man can recite volumes of facts on health, but if he lives recklessly, ignoring the very principles he knows, he is not wise. He is merely informed. Another may speak at length on success, quoting every authority and citing every book, yet if he never sets out to achieve, he has gained nothing but words. Wisdom comes not from what we collect in our memory, but from what we apply in our lives. It is knowledge tried, tested, and proven in the crucible of action. The difference between the two can be seen in the fruits they bear. Information often produces pride, wisdom produces humility. Information fills us with noise, wisdom guides us with clarity. Information changes quickly, always shifting with new discoveries. Wisdom is timeless, for it is rooted in the eternal truths of human nature. One makes us feel clever, the other makes us truly effective. We must remember that the accumulation of information is not the goal of life. It is tempting to read without reflection, to listen without application, to consume endlessly but never digest. This is the danger of our modern world, to be drowning in facts yet starving for wisdom. True wisdom requires us to pause, to think deeply, to separate what is useful from what is trivial, and to shape what we know into action that improves our lives and the lives of others. The wise man is not necessarily the most informed. He is the one who takes what little he may know and lives it fully. He understands that information is only potential, waiting to be made real through choice, discipline, and experience. He does not chase endless facts, but instead seeks timeless principles and lives by them daily. To mistake information for wisdom is to decorate the mind while leaving the soul empty. To seek wisdom is to take the knowledge we possess and turn it into a way of living that carries meaning, power, and lasting value. Many live as though their education is complete, and so they stop growing. They graduate from school or university, receive a diploma, and believe the work of learning has been finished. They treat education as though it were a final destination rather than a beginning. From that moment, their growth slows, their curiosity fades, and they begin to drift quietly into mediocrity. The tragedy is not that they cannot grow, but that they believe there is no longer a need to. Education, in truth, was never meant to end. Formal schooling is only the foundation, the starting block from which the real race begins. Life is a continuing process of discovery, and those who believe they already know enough soon find themselves ill-equipped for the challenges of a changing world. Technology shifts, industries transform, new opportunities emerge, and yet many remain rooted in the knowledge of years gone by. They do not see that while they stand still, the world moves forward. The great secret of successful men and women has always been their commitment to keep learning long after the classroom doors have closed. They understand that growth is not a phase of life but a condition of life. Just as the body weakens without exercise, the mind stagnates without continual use. The person who stops learning soon discovers that the skills which once served him well have become outdated, and the knowledge that once seemed sufficient has grown shallow in the face of new demands. Think of the man who proudly points to his years of schooling yet cannot adapt to the present. He speaks of what he once studied, but his knowledge belongs to yesterday, and yesterday cannot solve today's problems. Contrast him with the individual who continues to read, to reflect, to seek out new ideas, and to test them in daily living. Such a person grows not older merely, but wiser, more capable, more prepared for every opportunity that life presents. Growth is not measured by the years we spend in classrooms, but by the habits we build in life. A single book, thoughtfully applied, can advance a person further than years of forgotten lessons. A single skill, practiced and refined, can open doors no certificate ever could. True education is not about collecting facts, but about expanding one's capacity to think, to adapt, to create, and to contribute. The danger of living as though education is complete is that it places a ceiling on potential. It closes the door on new possibilities and blinds us to the richness of discovery. The mind left unused grows dull, curiosity left unfed dies away. But the person who sees education as a lifelong pursuit remains alive, alert, and ever ready to meet life with fresh eyes. He grows because he chooses to grow, and in doing so, he proves that the end of formal schooling is not the end of learning, but the true beginning of wisdom. The real measure of learning is transformation, not memorization. We often confuse the ability to repeat information with the evidence of true understanding. A student may recite facts flawlessly, a speaker may quote authorities by the dozen, and a man may carry within him entire volumes of information. Yet if none of it has altered the way he thinks, the way he acts, or the way he lives, then he has not truly learned. Memorization fills the mind, but transformation shapes the life. Real learning is never passive. It leaves an imprint, a mark that can be seen in conduct, in choices, and in results. When a principle is truly learned, it becomes part of the individual. It changes the way he views the world and the way he responds to it. To know that discipline leads to success, but to remain undisciplined is not to have learned it at all. To know that kindness enriches human relationships, but to continue in harshness is evidence that knowledge has not yet been absorbed. Learning must move from the head to the heart, and from the heart into daily living. The world is full of people who can repeat words but cannot demonstrate wisdom. They may impress with facts and figures, but their lives remain unchanged, for they have mistaken memorization for mastery. True learning requires digestion. Just as food must be broken down and absorbed to nourish the body, information must be reflected upon, understood, and applied to nourish the mind and spirit. Without this process, it passes through us without value. Transformation is the evidence of growth. A man who has truly learned patience becomes more patient in trial. A woman who has truly learned the value of persistence endures longer in the pursuit of her goals. A student who has truly learned the importance of curiosity does not stop with the textbook, but ventures further, exploring and questioning beyond the required. These are the signs that learning has taken root. Memorization can serve as a tool, but it must never be mistaken for the goal. Facts are useful, but they are stepping stones, not the destination. It is what those facts inspire us to do, to change, and to become that matters. Transformation turns principles into habits, habits into character, and character into destiny. We must therefore test our learning not by what we can recite, but by what we can demonstrate. Ask yourself after reading a book, what in my life will be different because of this? After hearing a lecture, ask, what action will I take today as a result of what I have heard? These questions separate the mere collectors of information from those who are truly educated. The real measure of learning is transformation, not memorization. It is the proof of knowledge applied, wisdom lived, and life improved. It is the difference between the scholar who knows and the person who grows, between the library of words and the life of meaning. Experience plus reflection is education's highest form. Life, in its essence, is the greatest classroom any of us will ever know. Each day brings us lessons disguised as challenges, victories, setbacks, and opportunities. Yet experience alone is not enough, for it is possible to live through many years and learn very little. What transforms mere experience into true education is the deliberate act of reflection, the conscious pause to ask what the experience has taught us and how it can shape the course of our future. A man may labor for decades in his profession, repeating the same tasks day after day, yet remain no wiser than when he began. Another may live through hardship after hardship, but if he never takes the time to consider the meaning behind those trials, he will repeat the same mistakes again and again. Experience without reflection is like sowing seed on barren ground. Activity without growth. Reflection is the process by which the lessons of life take root, deepen, and bear fruit. When we reflect, we turn the raw material of experience into wisdom. We look back upon what has happened and ask, what went right, what went wrong, what can I do differently? This practice transforms even failures into stepping stones. A man who fails and reflects becomes stronger, sharper, more prepared for the next challenge. A man who fails and never reflects only multiplies his chances of failing again. Reflection refines us. It polishes the rough edges left by experience and turns them into tools of progress. The wisest among us are not those who have avoided mistakes, but those who have learned deeply from them. They pause after each event, good or bad, and search for the hidden lesson. They understand that no day is wasted if it is examined, and no effort is in vain if it leaves behind insight. Reflection converts time itself into a teacher, for it ensures that nothing we endure is endured in vain. This principle is as old as mankind itself. The philosopher, the craftsman, the leader, the explorer, all advanced not by experience alone, but by interpreting that experience. They questioned, they considered, they extracted meaning. This is why a single year of thoughtful living can produce more growth than decades of unexamined existence. Reflection magnifies experience, turning every moment into education's highest form. To practice this, one need only set aside moments of quiet each day. A few minutes spent reviewing the day's actions, choices, and results can yield more progress than hours of thoughtless activity. Ask yourself, what did I learn today? How can I use it tomorrow? With this simple habit, life becomes a continuous cycle of learning, applying, and improving. Experience plus reflection is education's highest form because it elevates every event into a lesson and every lesson into wisdom. It is how ordinary living becomes extraordinary growth, how mistakes become milestones, and how the passing of time becomes the shaping of destiny. Pride in what we know can blind us from what we need to learn. There is a peculiar danger that comes with knowledge, a quiet arrogance that convinces us we have already arrived. When a man becomes too certain of his own understanding, he closes the very door through which greater wisdom might enter. He stops listening, he stops questioning, and in doing so, he stops growing. What once was strength becomes weakness, for pride in knowledge transforms the mind from a fertile field into a walled fortress where no new seed can take root. It is often said that the wisest among us are those who admit how little they truly know. They understand that the universe is vast, life is complex, and truth has layers that no one mind could ever exhaust. The proud man, however, believes his current knowledge is sufficient. He clings to it, displays it, and guards it, mistaking possession of facts for possession of wisdom. Yet in his very certainty, he becomes blind to the lessons waiting before him. He cannot learn what he thinks he already knows. History provides endless examples of this truth. Great nations, once powerful through discovery and innovation, declined when they grew complacent in their knowledge. Leaders who stopped listening fell while those who remained students of life endured. On a personal level, the same pattern holds. The employee who resists new methods because he already knows how things are done soon finds himself obsolete. The individual who believes he has mastered his craft stops improving and is quickly surpassed by those still eager to learn. Pride in knowledge creates stagnation. It tricks us into polishing the trophies of yesterday while ignoring the opportunities of tomorrow. It blinds us to the fact that growth requires humility, the willingness to admit ignorance, the courage to ask questions, and the discipline to keep learning no matter how much we think we know. The antidote to this danger is a spirit of lifelong curiosity. We must approach life as students, never graduates. Every conversation, every book, every challenge carries the possibility of a new lesson. Even the humblest teacher, the simplest experience, can hold wisdom for the one who remains open. Instead of guarding what we know, we must seek to expand it, refine it, and transform it through application. True intelligence is not measured by how much we know, but by how willing we are to learn more. The wise man holds his knowledge lightly, aware that it is only a fragment of a larger whole. He listens, he observes, he reflects, and because he remains teachable, he continues to grow. The proud man clings tightly to yesterday's learning, and so he blinds himself to today's opportunity. One advances, the other stands still. Pride in what we know can blind us from what we need to learn, and only humility can open our eyes again. Knowledge should be a lantern lighting the way ahead, not a wall that keeps us from moving forward. Continuous self-education is the foundation of success. Formal schooling may provide us with tools, but it is the ongoing decision to learn, to study, and to grow long after the classroom doors have closed that determines the true trajectory of a life. The individual who stops learning once he leaves school has chosen a path of slow decline, for the world moves forward each day, and only those who continue to grow with it can keep pace. Success is not built on what we once knew, but on what we continue to discover and apply. A man may have been at the top of his field 20 years ago, but if he has not advanced in knowledge since, he is already behind. The march of time demands growth, and only those who practice continuous self-education remain relevant, capable, and prepared for new opportunities. The successful man reads, listens, studies, and experiments, always searching for the next insight, the next principle, the next skill that will make him more effective. The beauty of self-education is that it never ends. Every book, every conversation, every challenge contains a lesson for the one willing to look for it. The mind, like the body, strengthens with use, and just as physical exercise keeps a person healthy, mental exercise keeps him sharp, adaptable, and creative. The man who reads daily, reflects deeply, and applies what he learns develops an inner wealth that cannot be taken away. His value increases not because of what he once knew, but because he is always in the process of learning more. Success has always belonged to the learners, the great leaders of industry, the innovators of science, the creators of art. None were content with yesterday's knowledge. They were students of life itself. They asked questions, pursued answers, and expanded their understanding with relentless curiosity. Where others grew complacent, they grew sharper. Where others believed they already knew enough, they pressed further. Their self-education was not a chore, but a passion, a way of life. The tragedy is that many waste the greatest opportunity they possess, the ability to direct their own education. They graduate, set aside the habit of study, and live as though their development is complete. They consume entertainment but not knowledge, distraction but not growth. And then they wonder why their lives do not advance. The difference between the average and the exceptional is often nothing more than a commitment to keep learning. Continuous self-education is the foundation of success because it fuels adaptability, sharpens vision, and builds confidence. Each new idea applied becomes another step upward, another tool in the hand, another advantage in the pursuit of a goal. It ensures that no matter what changes around us, we are never left behind. The individual who dedicates himself to lifelong learning possesses an inexhaustible source of growth. For as long as he continues to educate himself, he continues to expand his potential for success. The true purpose of education is to awaken curiosity and inspire action. Too often we mistake education for the mere transfer of facts from one mind to another, as though the memorization of information were the highest aim. But education was never meant to be an end in itself. Its real purpose is to stir the mind, to kindle a flame of wonder, and to inspire the learner to step out and act upon what has been discovered. Facts alone are lifeless. Curiosity breathes life into them, and action gives them meaning. When curiosity is awakened, the mind ceases to be passive and becomes alive. A curious person does not wait to be taught. He seeks, he questions, he digs deeper. Every book becomes an adventure, every conversation a lesson, every experience an opportunity to learn. He is not content with surface understanding, for curiosity drives him to the roots of things. This inner fire is what separates the educated from the merely informed. The one who memorizes facts may pass a test, but the one whose curiosity is awakened will continue learning long after the test is over. Education must never extinguish curiosity with rote repetition, nor should it reward only the ability to recall. The child who asks, why, is closer to true learning than the one who simply recites answers without thought. The adult who questions explores, and experiments continues to grow, while the one who rests on what he already knows begins to decline. The world does not reward what we know in theory, it rewards what we do with that knowledge. That is why the second purpose of education, beyond awakening curiosity, is to inspire action. Knowledge without action is like a seed left in the packet. It contains all the potential of life but produces nothing. The educated person is not the one who has gathered the most information, but the one who uses what he has learned to improve himself, his work, and the lives of others. Every great invention, every work of art, every breakthrough in science was the result of someone who not only asked questions but also acted upon the answers they found. The world has always belonged to the curious and the courageous. They are the ones who push boundaries, who refuse to accept limits, who see beyond the obvious. Education provides them with the tools, but curiosity guides their search, and action transforms their discoveries into progress. Without curiosity, education becomes sterile. Without action, it becomes stagnant. Together, they create a force capable of shaping both individual lives and entire civilizations. The true purpose of education is not to produce people who know more facts, but to produce people who live more fully, who think more deeply, who act more boldly. It is to create men and women who see learning as an endless adventure, and who understand that every idea, once grasped, must be tested and applied. Only then does education fulfill its purpose, for only then does it awaken curiosity and inspire action. In the end, the message is clear. Education is not a destination but a lifelong journey. Its danger lies in mistaking information for wisdom, its weakness in believing memorization is learning, and its tragedy in thinking it ends when school does. True education demands more. It asks us to remain curious, to apply what we know, to reflect upon our experiences, and to continue growing no matter how much we think we've learned. Knowledge without action leads to stagnation, but knowledge transformed through practice becomes power. Success belongs to those who humble themselves before the endless possibilities of learning, who never allow pride to blind them, and who see every day as an opportunity to grow. The purpose of education is not to fill our minds, but to shape our lives, to awaken curiosity, and to inspire us into action. When we live by this truth, we ensure that our education never ends and our potential never ceases to expand.